So, yeah, thank you, Councillor. So I just wanted to now invite Josh to speak to you in relation to the Pedestrian Access and Mobility Plan. Again, as I said earlier, it's been in place since 2016, and we felt it's appropriate just to revisit that document to see whether its assumptions sort of remain valid, the projects identified remain valid, and then ultimately also to discuss with you there this evening what our future consultation might look like with the community on this. So I might just hand over Josh. Are you happy to take over now, Josh, and speak to this?
Yep,
so I'll just take you to the next slide, councillors. So just tell me when you want to shift, Josh.
Perfect. Thanks, Ashley. So good evening, councillors. Yeah, so thank you very much for coming along. So as sort of highlighted by Ashley earlier, it's part of our operational plan for this year. There's an item to review the PAMP. So it's a pedestrian access and mobility plan, called a PAMP by everyone in typical council lingo. So look, a bit of a background on this. So the purpose of a PAMP, it's a strategic framework that helps guide improvements in pedestrian and active transport infrastructure. So our current PAMP is also our bike plan. It aims to make pedestrian usage of public spaces safer, more convenient, and more accessible for all users. The PAMP aims to create safe, accessible, and connected routes that integrate with the broader transport system. So it's not just about understanding sort of the council infrastructure, it's also about public transport, tourist attractions, and all those sort of things. It also helps to support broader goals around health, sustainability, and reducing dependence on vehicle transportation. So in the slide, there's also a link to the current PAMP if you'd like to read that. It's quite a lengthy document, but sort of if you skip towards the end, it has the maps which everyone wants to see and the priority projects and things like that. Thanks, Ashley. So the objectives of the PAMP is to improve safety for pedestrians, particularly around key trip generators such as schools, shops, and transport hubs. It's to ensure accessibility for all users, including those with mobility challenges, such as parents with prams, older residents. It's also to encourage active transport by creating connected, comfortable, and attractive cycling routes. So it's not just about providing sort of direct travel, it's also about providing places for recreation, things like that, as is sort of shown in the left there of the photo of the old Dodabell Street path, what it is, down towards the Butter Factory. If you compare that to what's there now, as I'm sure most people have walked on, it's a lot more inviting, and it does encourage sort of our community to get out and about and sort of use these spaces. Another objective of the PAMP is to align the pedestrian priorities with council's broader land use, transport, community plans, and development type goals. Thanks, Ashley. So the existing PAMP was adopted by council in January 2016. So it undertook a lot of its consultation in 2015 sort of year. It was developed to address current and future pedestrian needs, mainly across the four main centres, being Bellingen, Urunga, Dorrigo, and the Marston-Repton area. So as part of this, there was analysis of things like demographics, travel patterns, land use, pedestrian demand, and then it was also undertook a review of the policy framework at national, state, and local levels to ensure that it aligned with all of the sort of other strategic documents that we may have. It undertook a mapping of existing infrastructure, so there was an audit done on all of the townships to pick up all of the links, the missing links, and all these types of things, and also to pick up all the pedestrian generators such as schools, shops, community facilities, and attractions. Part of this process, there was targeted consultation with all of the different community groups, as well as an exhibition for the plan. It went on public exhibition for broader community feedback. So that's just a bit of a background. So I guess, yeah, go through it. Thanks, Ashley. So that sort of brings us to where we are now. So the existing PAMP was done in 2016. So it's been identified that 10 years old, it's probably time that we undertake a review of this and make sure it still aligns with everything that our community sort of expects. So the purpose of the review is to review the prioritisation of the existing projects following successful funding and completion of, so that's everything we've done in the last 10 years, is also to introduce new projects that reflect changes to the pedestrian or the road network since 2016. So while generally there hasn't been a lot in Bellingen Shire, there hasn't been huge developments or anything like that, there have been subtle changes that do impact the prioritisation and also the way that our community sees active transport. So things like the change between Guinea Way and the Pacific Highway, the reduction in traffic does mean that that route is suddenly a lot more desirable to walk along, things like that. Also to pick up new things like subdivisions, got the Urunga Heights or South Urunga development shown on the left there. There's also been new ones in sort of Bellingen, and Bellingen Urunga. So it's to pick up those type of things. It also is to react to other influences on pedestrian and active transport activity. So we've seen an increased community and social focus on active transport generally. It's something that through things like our plan for the future and stuff like that, the community is showing a very strong interest in pedestrian and active transport, and wants to see council sort of reflecting that in our prioritisation and in programs and things like that. It's also to respond to external drivers, things such as Dorrigo Arc, like the Rainforest Centre upgrade, also then proposals such as the Great Koala National Park, things that will drive increased visitation and use of sort of our road and pedestrian transport networks. And then also just to review our population growth and demographic data, just to make sure that we are catering to things like shifts in the age of populations and those sort of things.
So if I could just make a comment there, Josh, I just wanted to include that for you, councillors, because I guess it goes for me, to similar discussions we've had around other such matters around what has been the growth that we've seen in our shire and how do we respond to that. So we've been talking about that around other matters in the past. And I guess when we talk about reviewing the PAMP, I guess we did have a look at the methodology that was employed because it was a significant body of work and a costly body of work. But I guess in looking at where we've come to since 2016 and what's been delivered, but looking fundamentally at the data that was assessed, looking at what the growth and influence might be going forward, I guess the feeling of staff at this point in time is there hasn't been such a dramatic shift as there may be in larger growth councils that necessitate a very involved review and assessment process. So we're trying to pick up new projects without necessarily reinventing the wheel. So that's certainly what we felt was appropriate, but we're certainly keen to get commentary from councillors around this as Josh goes to speak about next steps. So Councillor Allen, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. I agree with what you say in regards to the growth, but I think one of the important points there is the increased community and social focus on active transport, particularly in the light of people's appreciation of drivers for climate change and looking to reduce emissions, plus also a greater understanding of our own individual health as well. So, I mean, I think they're really, really big drivers, and the reason why we've seen such a high priority through our plan for the future and the community surveys we've done, etc. People really want to see this network improved and expanded across the Shire. So while we may not have huge areas of growth, I think there is certainly a lot of interest and demand for improvements in this area. So I think this is a really important process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree, Mr. B. Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to comment in agreement with what you were saying too about, I think you were saying, don't engage someone like GHD to run again what they did in 2015 or thereabouts. Their review obviously very thorough, but there's also the first third or a half as information which probably council provided them, and then so I like the approach of not spending money in that way. There'll be a lot of knowledge internally that we can just build on what's there now.
And look, like the points that both yourself, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor O'Keefe raise are very valid, and I'm sure it's shared by all of our councillors. And I'm probably stealing Josh's thunder, but there's like the actual list of projects within the PAMP is extensive. I think we've done quite well in delivering against some of that. through securing some grant fundings, and we've seen some improvements. But we certainly acknowledge there's a lot to be achieved in this space. But the benefit is that the GHD process previously was so extensive. I believe it probably does a fairly good job of capturing a lot of what the community might be interested in, but we still want to obviously go through an engagement process and make sure that there's an opportunity to revisit our own thinking and see what that might look like. So we might move to the next slide if you're happy with that, Josh, and sorry to steal your thunder.
That's all right. So as Ashley sort of touched on, I just thought I'd throw this in here just as a bit of a status update on the PAMP, just so we can see how sort of effective we have been in implementing projects out of it. So originally there was 106 projects identified in the PAMP 2016. We've completed 14 of them, and then in design and planning there's 21. Of that 21, a fair few of those are sort of picked up in the South Urunga shared path within the Urunga CBD, and then also in Dorrigo, where we have the path and the footbridge upgrade heading out to the high school. And then we've got a couple of partially complete ones where, as a result of other projects, we've done sort of some of the work, but there's still a little bit left to go. But it does show that there's still 71 projects on the list not progressed. And when we sort of went through this process of identifying the projects and identifying where the funding came from, it really did highlight that there's good progress achieved, especially where external grant funding was secured, but there wasn't a lot that was actually funded by council. So I guess that's sort of my commentary around that is within the PAMP, we'll propose the projects, and I guess it's up to council and staff to set the direction and the recommendation on how these are implemented. So yeah, just down bottom there, highlights the need for continued prioritisation, funding advocacy, and integration into the Capital Works program generally. Next one, Ashley. So PAMP review next steps. So over the last few months, we've undertaken a review of the project statuses within existing, so that's all completed. Over the next few months, we were proposing to essentially either internally or with the help of a sort of smaller consultant produce new mapping and new like project listings, and from there to go out to a have your say style engagement with our community to allow them to view the maps that have been identified. That's the existing projects from 2015, as well as new projects that are known to staff. Sort of like was mentioned by Councillor O'Keefe, there is a fair bit of internal knowledge, and having spoken to our community a lot over the last couple of years in this role, I think I've got a pretty good handle on where our community wants to see footpaths. So I would hope we get most of those in there. And then, so that allows for the community through that have you say to identify projects that we haven't picked up, but also gets an understanding of where there is support for projects, and especially against other strategic things such as our plan for the future. And then we're pushing into Q4 of this year is where we're seeking to develop the draft PAMP, and that will include scoring and prioritisation of the projects. And we're proposing to use the same Transport for New South Wales weighted scoring criteria that was done in 2015-16, which will mean that it should reduce the sort of level of effort in terms of the scoring process and allow us to sort of reuse some of that, but also keep it in line with what was done there. From there, draft of the PAMP to be considered by council and to go on a public exhibition period for 28 days. I guess it's at this point that we'd like to sort of open it up to councillors in terms of your thoughts on this process, and if there's anything else or any questions.
Councillor Allen.
Yeah, thanks. I might just take the opportunity to remind councillors that the state government has got their strategic, what is it now? What's the acronym? It's the worst acronym in the world. Strategic Transport Integrated
Regional Plan.
Yeah, regional plan. At the moment, open at the moment. So that is all of us. We all have the opportunity to go on there and place the little marker where you think we should see improved cycleways, pathways, roadways, whatever. It's really important that we all do it and that we encourage everyone in the community to do it, because that will ultimately guide where the state government funding goes across our region. So they're doing the North Coast at the moment. This is our chance to do it.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Mr. Mayor, because going back to a comment that Councillor Brotherton corrected me on in a previous council meeting, where it's now the local transport forum as opposed to traffic. So it's all about all means of transport. There's a very, very much a change in focus for Transport for New South Wales, not looking just at vehicular traffic, but all modes of transport. So it's a really good point that there's an opportunity for the community to really influence that. It's very easy to do. Feel free to duplicate comments of others, but the more that the community engages in the process, the more weight we've got with our friends in the state government to try and develop real world outcomes.
Can you please share the link to everyone, because it's a little bit difficult to find?
Yep, certainly. Yep, I'll just do that. I'll mute myself while I tippy tap away. But just Councillor Shepherd's got a question as well.
Josh, excuse me. I was just wondering, of the 71 that are not done, are there any, are there any in there, or is there a significant number of projects that are now perhaps obsolete from 10 years ago?
Look, I'll probably have to give you a proper answer on that one, but my gut feel says no. A lot of the projects that were identified were footpaths on urban streets and things like that. Generally, I'd say those projects still stand. I can't think of any really that I'd say are obsolete and should be removed from the list. Yeah, no, and that's sort of where we're coming to in terms of saying, at this point in time, we believe we can go out to the community with what we've got, with a little bit of information added to from the community, from staff, and then get the community's thoughts on it, as opposed to going back to someone like GHD and getting that full review done. Thanks, Ashley.
Sorry, Councillor. So I've just popped that that link, and forgive me for the typo, but basically that link's in the chat so that councillors have got access to it, and also the community. So again, just so you can maybe understand what that looks like, if I just quickly try and share my screen again, this will be the landing page that you get onto, and then you can see here it's basically you can either upload a submission, or literally, bear with me as I try and scroll and get past that, you can see here that this is even dramatically transformed. So you can go into an area, you can place a pin, and you can have a comment. So for instance, if you hover over this one here, you can basically see that someone's made a comment about a cycle along Waterfall Way to connect communities, something that we're all very familiar with. So the more people that start to influence that,
that wasn't even me.
No, you're not Robinson Crusoe there. A lot of people are advocating for that, but the more that we see in this space, whether it be alternate routes, cycleways, transport improvements, all sorts of things, this is going to be one of the key drivers that's going to feed into that decision-making process for state government in developing, the North Coast Strategic Regional Integrated Transport Plan. So, Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. That'll be great. Thanks, Steve. Josh, you invited comment on the process. I think it looks really sound. Clarification, does council, as we kick off that process, do you go out with certain projects in mind as a starting list? And I'm thinking footpaths and cycleways, or is the process that we don't do that, we just wait to hear from the community and then start crystallising it? So I'm not saying one way is better or the other, just so I could understand that.
No, the proposal was for us to develop mapping, also similar to that was provided as part of the 2016 PAM. We'll do that internally, and that will have the existing outstanding projects from 2016, as well as anything that we've identified internally since.
Okay, good. You probably said that.
And that will be that'll be the starting point, and that will sort of let the community say, this is what we've identified. Provide your comment on that. However, if there's something that we've missed, feel free to let us know and it'll be considered, sort of thing. I think that way is sort of, we should pick up a lot of the things, but also gives the community a bit of confidence we have thought about it before.
Yeah, good. Fantastic.
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good point, councillors. We're actually tossing. So I've got on a different page, I've got the Excel spreadsheet, which basically identifies all the sites, and we were pondering whether to provide that or not. But it's probably a little bit confusing because it's very much just a description of sites, and it's a little bit easier to look at a map and understand, okay, well, that issue relates to that location. Okay, well, I can see that, okay, we've been conscious of discussions before, whether it be the footpath between Mileston or Repton. If you can see that visually on the map, it's easier understood. We've had people talking about Hammond Street in Bellingen. People can see that. So once we've got that mapping available, it'll make it far easier for the community and also for councillors to have a look at that and see what's already covered, because as it said, the list is still quite extensive with over 70 still to be addressed. But we certainly want this process to identify something we may not have considered, and maybe also to help us to revisit the priorities, because there's existing priorities that sit in the spreadsheet that again will get shared with people so they understand what the current priority is and give them opportunity to comment about that differently. Councillor Allen.
As we are so reliant, or nearly 100% reliant on external funding to deliver this, is it possible to get a list of the areas of funding that we normally target or have been successful in or exist, so we have a better understanding of where the funding is?
Would you like to comment to that, Josh?
It's something that we'll definitely have to come back to you with the list, but I don't believe it would be too hard to sort of do that, to collate where we've been successful in funding and where we have applied in the active transport space over the last few years. I don't think that would be too difficult. No.
Yeah, that'd be great. The reason I ask is there's been discussions at like a JO level about having an advocacy position on trying to increase the sort of global funding of the active transport network. So it'd be good to have a fuller understanding of what the current situation is, so that we can try and push that forward.
Probably some of our most recent successful applications have largely related to safety themed grant programs, especially around schools and the like. So all the stuff from in Bellingen linking along William Street and again the works down towards Dopel Street are being off the back of trying to improve mobility, access and safety for students. And so we've achieved some outcomes, but we're not at the end of that yet. So we'll be conscious about trying to provide defined pedestrian crossing points to assist some of those locations as well. But that's been one of the big drivers for us, but we'll certainly come back to you with a list.
Okay, thanks.
So are there any other